Okay, so on the left, you see the tree demo that I had just finished in pencil. I was just starting the charcoal one and got interrupted, and so now I'm going to pick this back up. So I'm using vine charcoal. I've got a thick stick and a thin stick of that. I'm also going to probably use my kneaded eraser. I'm going to kind of think about building this tree very similarly to how I did this one. I can do a lot of moving of the media with my fingers, though, more so than I can with the pencil. So, in terms of time, all my charcoal and chalk pastels are going to go a lot faster to imply the idea of a tree, much faster than trying to do things with my pencil. So if you're interested in pencil, please watch the demo on how I started this one and started to fill up the space with it. And I'm going to kind of pick back up where I was with this one over here, and then I'm going to come back and keep working this top. So when you start your landscape, again, I would suggest a 2H or an H pencil, just gestural kind of placement, where you kind of want the form to sort of go, or where it's going to kind of fit. So it's very light, and only you really are the one paying attention to what those lines are. As long as I keep that light, that sketch light, if I put charcoal or anything on top of it, you're going to see that just kind of dissipate and not be attentive anymore. So to start, I had sort of taken the idea of where the trunk placement was going to be. I had kind of pulled a few branch lines out where I wanted some more stronger clumps to be. If you look at the zoom on building your landscape, you'll see that we talked a lot about trees coming in as clusters or clumps of leaves off of branches. Some of your trees may not have branches yet. You may be down in this kind of world down here, but think about how you can utilize depth and having leaves sitting on top of limbs, not just sitting on a limb. So instead of having my charcoal come out and seeing this as my tree, I want to think more about bigger ideas or bigger placements for it. So I may have a full limb that shows up. I may have another part to that limb that shows up. But if I've started to get foliage on those structures, I may have just some dots out to the side that I use in here. I'm going to do that same thing on this other tree. I may start to build up some areas where I've got some sense of form or some leaf structure. Okay. And then I may pat through, or I may pull through. Like I'm using my finger to just kind of tap. So where I kept some of that by not smudging the whole thing flat, but where I kept some of those darker forms, that's where I can start to have some darker value into the bottom or a shadow into the edge of the tree. But keep in mind, when I'm working with charcoal, I'm going to start to obliterate some of that. I'm going to put some of this back in because that's driving me crazy. Okay, so even if I'm doing this, I'm starting to lose the sense of highlight in the structure of the tree. So that's where I may come back in with my kneaded eraser. Get a nice clean edge on that. Kind of smush it into a little point, and I can create some highlight into that structure of those leaves. So if this branch is coming forward a little bit, maybe I've got another green amount of some things behind it, right? Or above it. I might want to work all of the shadow edges of my plant structures or my tree structures before I start working the highlight edge to those structures. So if I come in and pat again to get a little bit more detailed, I might find a cornery edge, kind of help create a sense of texture there. If this is in front, I want to eliminate the bottom edge of the shadow that I just put in, right? So I want to try to control a line or an edge to that highlight to help get that shape to come forward. Okay, so as I do that, I could work back and forth. Like I let that shadow part to the underside come in a little bit too far for where I had my height on the other side of that cluster of branches. So I may need to put some dark edges back in to get that to go behind a little bit more. Okay. So to let this one come forward, I'm going to try to get the highlights to sit on top of the shadows. Okay. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Trees, really, I mean, the more you practice them, the better you're going to get at them and the faster you'll get at them. If we were in school last week, your sketchbook probably would have been to do some tree drawings. This week would have been to do more whole landscapes and kind of play around with those, so that you'd have a much better sort of structure going into what we were doing in the classroom. Okay. All right. So maybe I'll save this and I'll use this next year when we get out here too. Okay. The trunk of the tree, I almost forgot. When you're using charcoal, you may find if it's got a lot of texture to the trunk, after you've done some swiping, this I had put a few lines like that in, and then kind of gently sort of pulled at the structure. If I come back in and pull some highlights back out, I'll get more sense of form with this. But keep in mind, anything under my foliage, anything down here, that's going to stay pretty dark. Okay, so those big branches full of leaves are going to create shadows at that top part of that tree. So if I focus mostly at the base of the tree, that's where I would pick up more of the natural sunlight. Okay. Getting a tree to go into the ground. Yeah, that's a good one too, right? So the transition, when you look at bases of trees kind of fall into a ground. Often there's some sort of circular mulch around them, or we may see some of that root kind of flattening out. So look for those V shapes in the roots and how you can utilize a sense of highlight next to shadow to kind of help show that sense of form in the root. Okay. You might find one or two edges that sort of come from the root up into the tree, and that'll give you a little more definition too. Same thing on the pencil side. This is my H, so that's not going to be dark enough, I don't think. But you may have a little bit of grounding or V shape into your root structure. That's pretty severe. I'd go with a little bit of a lighter value in there. But again, keep in mind that you have the ability to create negative space values that can help pull those trees forward. So if I put a little bit of value in my horizon line, so maybe this is my grassy zone, or maybe there's some weeds in here. If I start to build that in and build those areas in, then I can utilize what I want to pull out with as a highlight, or maybe I want to eraser out some of the sections and kind of create a better edge for that tree to be. Need a little better eraser on that. So keep in mind textures and contrasting textures are going to be nice to get the sense of some forms. You can utilize some small details. You might not want a ton of detail. It just depends what you're trying to show off in your tree or in your tree's structure, or there could be pieces behind coming in and creating that form of that tree. Lots of times we'll see this kind of thing. If you're a little kid, a lot of us will do that one to kind of help push that tree back someplace. If you make a broad stroke that's really, really dark, it's going to go flat. So if you start to do that kind of thing, be conscious that you may need to come in and create a highlight next to that dark. This kind of stems back to that ink wash study that we did. So be conscious of what detail you want to do, and don't work your darks up until you've got enough of that detail started to make sure that you've got a sense of highlight and shadow. All right, email me anytime you got some questions. I'll be hit and miss. I'm trying to get through all of your other stuff right now, okay? And this is my last video for you guys. Good luck on your trees. Clouds, pretty much the same kind of thing. Look at your cloud structure.